I would like to start by thanking the ArchiNet team and Mohammed for hosting us today for this part 2 of our talk. Today we'll be talking more on another level from last week. Last week was more on dwelling design. This week we'll be talking more on urban design or urban level design. Unfortunately, we just want to note that one of our speakers today, Ms. Lara الخولي, will not be able to join us. However, she might hop on in the questions part. She worked a lot on this presentation with us, so we will try to do our best to present her part in the best way possible. As not to take a lot of your time, again, we all have faced COVID-19. Last week, we talked a lot about COVID-19 and what the its impact on climate and our environment in the past, specifically 3 months. But to take you way back in history, we wanted to, again, this is something we already spoke about last week. However, we want to highlight again that these pandemics has been something that has been recurring before. We have faced lots of many pandemics, like in the 14th century, there was the plague, there was the cholera in the 19th century, and the third plague as well. And all of these pandemics has really influenced the way our cities were designed, the way architecture has been really influenced, and designers have took a lot of precautions and perception out of these pandemics into their the method that design has been involved. Maybe the most recent pandemic that happened before the COVID-19 was in the 20th century, and the tuberculosis, which really influenced modern architecture. It was a time where modern architecture evolved, and designers looked into the design of hospitals with clean lines, and lots of our buildings became very much resembling hospitals in the way big windows are designed, very rough architecture, not much colors used. And again, it was very, modular design with big windows, considering ventilation and considering things like that. And these are things that really influenced our design and our cities. Last week, as I said, we spoke about home design and how the COVID-19 had really influenced the way we look at our spaces, especially with being entrapped in our homes for a long time with the lockdown. Also, on the term of offices, I think this has been also an issue. Of course, lots of offices ceased activities and stopped during the lockdown. However, also now that everything is reopening and things are coming back to normal, there's always this perception of how the offices will be now redesigned or evolve again, because we're used on open plan offices. And again, now maybe this would not be very valuable or not very valid, sorry, in this case, where we'll need to look into measures of making sure that there's the appropriate social distancing. So overall, there was the global lockdown that happened to all of us. And I think it really affected us and affected all the globe in different ways. People all of a sudden found themselves going from an actual mode to a virtual mode, moving online, moving to tools and softwares online. Kids from schools and universities stopped going to school and university and stopped conducting virtual classes. Lots of people was bound to their houses and all the day doing lots of activities within their houses. People felt, especially in Europe, the seclusion and felt that they are being very isolated. So they started going to terraces, playing music. Lots of people starting even conducting lots of activities from home, like working out, even some social events like engagement and things went online as well. And I think when we say that Zoom has made a lot of profits within this period, because again, we went virtually. And I think these virtual or IT solution companies made lots of profits in this time and this period, because really people started utilizing their tools a lot. I think in Saudi Arabia, there was lots of things turning to a new norm. Like, yes, COVID-19 provided or presented a huge crisis and a threat, but also it brought along lots of opportunities. And I think one of the things that we really need to pause and look at is the leadership and the sacrifices that has been taken by the government. For example, seizing Umrah and all the holy mosques have been seizing activities and stopping these activities for the first time in many years. We look at Mecca and it's empty, and this is such a brave move from the government, and such a great sacrifice to show how much human lives and was at value, and the risk that COVID-19 brought to our lives. Moving back to Sooman, my friend.
Hello, everyone. So I would like to share with you the timeline that we have created. In Saudi, what we noticed and we all experienced that the first response was very quick. The moment there was the first case here, which was detected on the 2nd of March, the country started doing step-by-step lockdown, and it started off as early as 4th of March. So from 4th March, there was a suspension of Umrah and local and international. And following that week and the next week, the cinemas were closed. The international flights were suspended by 14th of March. So as we divided the lockdown through the different phases, we realized how quickly the government reacted to all of that. As the cases kept on increasing, they kept on imposing more and more lockdowns gradually, until when the cases reached over 100, there were 100 cases, then the curfew timing was set from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. And as the government was trying to understand where the cases are increasing, they realized that the 6 districts which were very densely populated, these were the areas that needed to be to go under complete 24-hour lockdown. And later on, the whole of Jeddah actually was completely under complete lockdown. And I would like to commend on one thing that, moving on to the next slide, as the country went through this whole transition of step-by-step lockdown and eventually to a 24-hour lockdown in Jeddah, we noticed that the residents of Jeddah were very cooperative at that time. Although it was Ramadan and Eid, which is a highly festive area and there are lots of gatherings, and yet we saw the streets were completely empty. And had people not been so cooperative with our government policies, cases would have multiplied and would have become uncontrollable. So they were respectful, they were keeping space, they were wearing masks, and it was all done very gracefully. So the country was successful only because, as you can see from the slide, Saudi Arabia responded very well to the COVID by creating these applications, which were very useful and apt, and they were created at the moment the first corona COVID case was announced. Like these apps were Tawakkalna app, for instance, like when you wanted during the lockdown period, if anyone needed anything in urgency, they could just step out and for an hour with this app, with the help of this app, or if you need a doctor appointment, you could communicate through an app called Mu'eed, where you could get appointments. So there was a lot of steps which were taken gradually as the lockdown was imposed in the city. So this was all to make sure that there is minimum physical contact. However, even though the government took the right measures, the civilians also took the right measures as well, they were responsive, yet we see a very quick, we see that the COVID crisis had shocked and impacted the world in an unprecedented fashion. So it confined people to their homes, and people were unable to continue with their normal lives. And having the globally, it was completely halted for how long we were not very sure at that time. So the effects of lockdown gradually became evident in each sector of the city. So if we look at the public sector, initially we all experienced this denial that this was happening. Then it led to some conspiracy theories. People were coming up with new ideas why this virus is about. But then globally, one thing which was noticeable was that immense fear in among the citizens, and people could not feel safe outside their homes. If you look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the famous theory, then safety, health, and personal security is the most basic need for mental peace. And that was something which is missing, which we all felt was missing during this period. If I would like to touch upon the private sectors, which were also affected a lot during this period. The local businesses, they've been running for decades in Jeddah, especially. They were unable to function online because they were very traditional shops. So they were not able to function. And one thing that I want to mention is the policymakers. They had the most, they showed an immense amount of leadership, because the decisions that they took at the right time, that was really needed by all of us, because it was an eye-opener and we all needed to be told how the world will continue in this lockdown and afterwards as well. So initially, yes, the effect of the COVID was a complete lockdown, complete halt to all our events, all our functions. But you know, we conducted a survey, and the result of the survey, even though everything was done in a very smooth way, only 18% of the population said that they were satisfied with the online continuation. People wanted to start moving. People want the world to start functioning the way it used to, or as much as possible close to that. So the survey we conducted made it evident that lockdown it created an emotional upheaval among people. One of the things that I would like you to look at is the transformational milestone that we observed, how the people reacted over a period of time. Before the lockdown, our homes were only 30% occupied in the weekend, but now during the lockdown, it was occupied 100%. And they became extremely efficient, rather than a space where you would leisure, you would relax, but actually it became a very highly efficient space. Then if you look at the streets, the public spaces, the streets were used in a very different way, because there were no cars, and because of the app Tawakkalna, people used it to go out for a walk for an hour, close within their vicinity. Another thing I would like to note, I would like to point, is the workplaces. The offices and the work completely shifted from a physical office to working from home. So how will it, the way it transitioned after the lockdown, that companies came up with the new strategies and plan how to make sure that maybe 30% of the staff comes in on one day, and the next day it's an alternate staff coming in, and it was like a blended working environment. So we all learned from this shutdown and lockdown. We all experienced that how the country shifted gradually, and how we all experienced. But the shutdown that we all experienced can only be temporary. It can't. Is it a temporary solution or a recurring solution? What will happen when a pandemic is hit? If the cities are hit by a pandemic like this? Because people, according to the survey that we did, people experienced isolation, and it was a very range of experience, from agoraphobia to wanting their life to go back to normal, to denying that everything is happening. So if we don't work all together and to eliminate the virus, we might be looking for another 24-hour lockdown. So we need to be very careful. We're all in this together. So we need to develop a strategy and work our cities accordingly. Sherin, can you please?
So moving back to our last
Dr. Sherin, your mic is off. Can you back again?
mute. mute. Okay, so I'm sorry. Yes, so moving to our life again after the lockdown, we noticed that we were part of this science fiction movie, like we went back to life, but we were in this parallel universe where there was a tweak and changes a little bit in our lives. People used to move around with masks, keeping social distance in public spaces. Even there was a lot of initiatives and design intervention on how to keep people secluded and keeping this social distance between users in different commercial spaces, on-site spaces. And I think one of the really important questions here as designers became how can we redesign our cities accordingly? How can we've always looked into sustainability and as our #1 priority in urban design, and again with lots of things like cultural and social things. However, now health and safety became also something that we really need to touch upon, something that is really flashed on, and we really need to take more consideration into it when designing our cities. And there was lots of, as urban designers, like in many different sectors and fields, people started, conducting workshops and webinars and speaking news about how the cities will evolve, everything will happen, how our urban planners react to the city post this COVID-19. There was lots of changes, there was lots of uncertainties, things are not the same as they used to be. And so for us as designers, we also decided, to conduct this research. And again, these are still, our research is still going on, and this is still initial results, and we're still looking into more literature than results. However, we started by conducting a survey, online survey, where we got around 800 plus responses, 65% of which were Saudi citizens, targeting mainly the city of Jeddah. And within this survey, we looked into users' experience and how people experienced the lockdown in terms of systems, online systems, services, and facilities with different categories that goes under this. And we discussed, or we looked into 4 or 5 different sectors. And of course, we looked into the policies that need to govern all of these systems. So in terms of services and facilities, our first indication and education we noticed, which is something all of you must have noticed as students or as parents who has kids studying, or even as people who are working and went online, lots of education went completely virtually. 9, I think, out of 10 students worldwide went from an actual school mode to a virtual mode where they started utilizing tools like Zoom, Google Classroom, Blackboard Collaborate. The government team here also have initiated this electronic gate called Ain, which cover all the education system from kindergarten all the way to high school, with 127 supervisors, 112 subjects being discussed online. And there was an introducing 19 different learning channels. And when we asked the users here in Jeddah, I think the most thing that the challenge they found about online tools is that people felt they're not getting the same quality of education that they are paying for in terms of school fees. On another note, looking into neighborhood facilities, which is a really important thing, because there was some time when we were really locked within our houses, and there was a time where we also were locked within our neighborhood. So if your neighborhood is not well serviced, if you don't have a supermarket, a pharmacy, everything within your neighborhood, you will has been facing more challenges than other people. So all over the world, people have started using public space more, because they are bound within their homes. So they started to go outside for a stroll, playing sports, having some family time outside of the house. People here in neighborhoods, however, when we looked into our survey, it was noticed that lots of people said, okay, in terms of supermarkets and facilities, okay, they had 77% said they had these facilities covered well in their neighborhood. However, there was also the challenge of going outside with these facilities. So it's not only enough to have the facility, because if it's crowded, if lots of people are, and the capacity of people who are using this facility is high, then it becomes a challenge. And we noticed that 79% of the people said that they want to have these facilities contained within a smaller number of users. Another thing which is really important is healthcare. I think one of the things important about healthcare, of course, people went, this is the places where people would, the first, place that they will head in if you're affected or infected by COVID-19. So people became really scared of going to healthcare places. healthcare system and hospitals, has taken lots of initiative, lots of precautions, looking into sanitization of high-touch services that they have, looking in material, separating and looking into rearranging furniture and spaces so that they guarantee that there's enough social distancing between their occupiers and users. And of course, I think one of the things that we also really noticed as a challenge in the healthcare sector was people wanting to take appointments. Again, there was online tools and everything, but people didn't know exactly how to utilize these tools, did not understand it well. So we noticed that the challenge that the people mostly mentioned in this case was getting an appointment or to facilitate. And this is something that they covered also later on virtually. Going to another thing or category was, of course, shopping. Shopping in us in Jeddah is not only a commercial activity, it's also part of our social activities. Like people would go to malls not only for shopping, but also to socialize with other people. And because of the weather and because the climate is hot, again, most of the year, the malls present a more valid place to be in than outdoor spaces. However, now with this COVID-19 and with this challenge, it became really like, okay, so they stopped malls, lots of malls closed. But the question was, how can we reopen malls with all the capacity and the foot count of malls? This provides a huge burden and becomes a challenge for the designers and even the users who want to use these facilities. And on another term, which is the systems, going online. Again, as we said before, we went online in different things. I think in education and health and care and other facilities, but also in shopping. And I think one of the things is that lots of commercial, because the economy was really affected, lots of people started to look into, or businesses started to look into how they can move to virtual mode and conduct their online shopping and conduct their online games. And people also started to utilize lots of tools, download that I'll show you later on. Lots of tools was initiated and downloaded, I think, up to 73 different tools, online tools to help people, service people with lots of things. And again, the question was, people were willing to go online and do online shopping, but the challenge was finding enough slots, finding the delivery time, because you could purchase something and you can have it delivered in 2 weeks and you cannot wait this time. And although there was lots of initiatives, lots of tools provided for the users, when we asked people, do you think Jeddah is ready to go online? 52%, which is more than half, said that we are still not ready to go online for these different challenges. And these are just the tools that, the 73 tools that mainly covered lots of the facilities in terms of shoppings and applications. However, it was also noticeable and important to highlight this Amazon thing, because we all as shoppers, we utilize Amazon a lot. It's a famous company all over the world. And Amazon had souk.com here in Jeddah. However, with lots of people trying to still order things over Amazon, they were not able to conduct this shopping because, again, flights ceased and the delivery was taking a long time. So Amazon realized this niche, the big niche of the market here in Jeddah, and decided, you know what, we'll take souk over and we will turn it into Amazon.sa, which made lots of us really relieved and happy, because Amazon has been a global part of our shopping here as users. In terms of policy, I think one of the very important things that we notice is the mobility or walkability. There is no surprise that after the lock of COVID-19 or the lockdown and the COVID-19 crisis, that people ceased using public transportation in lots of places in the world. I think that was a big hit to a public transportation section, which is a main thing that all lots of goals, sustainable goals, have been funding and putting direction towards. And I think people started saying, okay, will we be more car dependent now? And this was a huge hit to this, lots of funding put in this sector. And again, on another note, people started to say, no, let's look into walkability. If you have proximate services to you, maybe you can walk to your services. Let's look into perhaps cycling and other modes of transportation instead of going to car dependency, which is completely reverting back to the old way. One very interesting result we found out of this is that 51% of the users here in Jeddah said that they wouldn't mind walking to the place that they are going, if it's a service place, it depends only on the weather and the timing, so they wouldn't actually mind, and that was really surprising for us, given that users here are mainly car dependent. Another important issue was air quality. There was no surprise that all over the world, if you look at the satellite image, again, pollution really cleared a lot, and this was mainly due to less congestion, less traffic. Here in Jeddah, if you look at the baby blue, the light blue color here, it shows that congestion levels really decreased in the time of the lockdown. And hence people, when we asked them what they noticed about the lockdown, was that they felt that Jeddah has cleaner and less polluted air.
Thank you, Sherin. Another thing. Sorry about that. Yes, so another thing that we would like to highlight in our research, that the economy, we all know, we were all observing that how much the economy suffered globally and locally as well. So globally, we saw that there was a major crisis with the jobs and the salaries reduction, and especially the minorities all around the world were the first ones to be laid off. And they were the first ones to lose job, and also adults who were low income adults, they were the first ones to lay off, and then they were the ones who were dependent on weekly or monthly wages. And according to the survey that we conducted, we also noticed that about 28% observed that they experience a deduction in salary. And 30% of the population actually is more, they have no salary. They are more businessmen and entrepreneurs. So only 30% experienced no change during this time. So this is something which pandemic really affected our economy, and we need to be sure that next time, in case of our cities, if our cities are designed and resilient, in such a way that it accommodates and changes and adapts to the situation, then maybe the economy will not go through the way it did this time. Coming to another important point that we would like to mention here is the production. So during the pandemic, we all noticed that there was a lack of production and supply of goods. And according to an article published in the Zine, that stating that 7 predictions for the changes that might occur after the pandemic. One was that globally there will be a mass rejection of mass industry, and maybe the countries and the cities will go back to producing their locally produce the goods and the products that is needed within a society, which is how the old way was. But this is something that is going to happen, and maybe our cities accommodate that. Another important thing that we would like to mention is that tourism. It is that time of the year, it was summers, and everyone had summer plans during this time. Usually vacation means that traveling international, but now that we are all restricted to our homes and our cities, then local tourism is something which is reviving now, and it is something that we should, as a city, we should really invest in and make sure that it is fully equipped to cater the local people. One more thing that I would like to mention before we move on is the reason why it was so difficult to manage the corona spread over globally. For instance, this is basically the high dense areas in a city. During this time, what we found out that Jeddah had 50 plus unplanned settlements, and during this time, those settlements, the informal settlements, were the hardest to control because they were highly dense, they were closely packed together. If you look at the picture, look at the surrounding population, how far set out they are, and the squatters are jam-packed together. And these are the 6 districts which went through the lockdown first. The government went through a major decision, and they upgraded the plan to relocate these sectors, and these areas and the neighborhoods were according to their needs and requirements. If we look at the different sectors which we would like to talk about, is the Sherin, yes.
Okay, so looking into the 5 sectors that we said or mentioned that we'll be discussing was, first of all, the real estate sector. Of course, again, overall, real estate sector all over the world has not been really hit because people still need homes. The number of people are still rising. So, however, the notice is that there was a shift to suburbia, or a shift in the relocation of places, like people who are renting, for example, a case of rentals in Dubai noticed that 44% of raise in the rental in the apartments that has balconies in this case, villas and things like that. So the good news also for architects is that people now who cannot move their houses need to update their houses to accommodate the different activities that they need within their house. So there is lots of interior design work and architecture work going into facilitating home working spaces, for example, and other spaces that utilizing other spaces that users will need, and especially after they face this lockdown. In terms of property status, I think most of people here are renting or owning their houses, and this again gives the reflection is that can people actually move to maybe gated communities because they have more facilities? Are facilities more important? People moving to villas, and or the note that I already mentioned that okay, if we cannot move, then we need to update our houses. On business level, I think there was really the importance of, because again, lots of business ceased activities for a long time, and they started working from home. This has been mainly noted in the term where if now we go back to work, what will happen? Will we be conducting work as business as usual, where the same number of employees be existing in the same time? Will be do a rotation where a certain time some people can work from home, another time some people can work from the office? And when we surveyed the people here, we noticed that 37%, which is the biggest number of our surveyors or people who responded to our survey, were self-employed, meaning that they are entrepreneurs having their own businesses or like having private business. And again, because there was lots of uncertainty in this time, some people faced salary reduction, although the majority of people didn't face this reduction, but there was still some people who lost their jobs and got some salary reduction within this hard period. A very interesting note was that when we asked people, are you willing to work online or not, 44% said that they are willing to actually live anywhere and study or work online, which means that there is a switch, there is a change here in the mindset of people of deciding and recognizing the advantages of working online. And of course, most of the users, 58%, mentioned that, okay, I would rather work in a place that is really close to my house. On the term of dwellings, which is something we conducted research on already and we discussed last week. However, it's always important to highlight, even in this on urban scale, how these dwellings and the spaces and facilities has become more important now. People realize that, because we realize that here in apartments, for example, lots of people live under the same roof, like 3 to 5 people in apartment and about 6 to 9 people in villas. So we have lots or a big number of users under the same roof, which utilize and highlight that there's an important thing of providing the same facilities, tools, and remodeling our houses to accommodate these people working from home or conducting activities within their homes.
Yes, so I want to touch upon 2 more important things, which are the commercial amenities. One is commercial amenities. Basically, our cities cannot function without the commercial setup and the layout. They are integral part of the cities, but simply reopening them after the COVID period is not really an effective solution. As we have seen, when the malls are opened or the high street in UK were opened, despite that it was opened after a long period of time, people were scared, still scared, and they don't want to go into an enclosed environment when you know that the disease is airborne. So what do we do? How it is our responsibility as architects and designers to make sure that maybe the city adjusts the commercial amenities, actually adjust to the new style of lifestyle, which is everything is integrated into the online system. So we have just like these cars, they are online. You can maybe partially access the shops online, basically to limit physical interaction. So improvising the setup of the shops in such a way that there is minimal physical interaction, so that the public feels secure. So similar to the commercial amenities, the entertainment, that is still an integral part of any society, any healthy society. We need, and Saudi culturally as well, we have a lot of restaurants and people want to go out and eat out. So what is it that we do which will continue to facilitate this need in this niche? Maybe as designers, we can create spaces which can contain a family within a like the picture that you see here, or maybe it is spread out and placed safe distance away. So whatever the solution, we need to look at it. And another important thing, the cinemas, now we are noticing that everything is closed, the cinemas are closed. How can we reopen it, redesign it? Maybe it is an outdoor cinema where people can go back to enjoying these activities. So with challenges, there are opportunities as well. One of the challenges that we all noticed was the lack of efficiency during this lockdown. People were feeling lazy and they were unable to produce as efficiently as they were used to, because obviously they're at home all the time. But having said that, the opportunity was that they were able to spend a lot more time with family. And that itself is a very attractive thing, which brings me to the question that we asked the people that we surveyed, that are you ready to go back to a normal life while COVID is still out there? And interestingly, majority said that yes, they do want to go out and resume to some extent. And there was a large number of 37% who said no, they're still not comfortable. So we as designers, what do we do about the city that we live in? We look at it in an analytical way. We understand how cities function, how people live here, how different facilities are catering to different needs of a society. Does a city go back to how it was before, like revert 180 degrees back to the old ways, or do we try something new and make it maybe come up with different types of ideas? Maybe there is it's a centralized hub where all the amenities are centrally placed, or maybe it is at different nodes within a city where people can visit it and there are close proximity, so people can visit it easily. So these are just a different way of looking at it, that how can we as designers design our cities in a better way. So we have looked at all these different sectors, and we've realized after an analysis that we conducted that these are the three sectors that we would like to work further on: the services and facilities, systems, and policies. These are the things that we would like to include in our research. A few more things as we are progressing with this life. It is the urban life that we want to redefine, and the people at the moment are so unsure of the urban life that they are willing to move to the countryside. And how do we make sure that our cities become so resilient that in a situation like this, they continue to exist. So a healthy community is a city which is resilient and is able to cope up with all kinds of emergencies and situation which is threatening like this. So how do we design cities which are accommodating and which are more resilient? Of course, before COVID, one of the main concerns as designers was always that sustainability was a major part of concern, and whatever upgradation that our cities need, sustainability will be the core sector of it. But during this pandemic, it was a big eye-opener to the designers as well as everyone else, and we've realized that health and safety is actually just as a big a concern, and it needs to be integrated when we are upgrading our cities. So the question is, what is the answer? Is it the cities are going to change after COVID lockdown, or is it going to adapt and incorporate the things that are needed? So evolving our city to adapt is the answer that we have arrived as researchers. And yes, I would like Sherin to continue.
Okay, so the question remains the same. We don't want to revert back. We don't want to go back our way. We just need to keep moving forward, just keep updating, just keep making sure that we accommodate all of these eye-openers, all of these new measures within our sustainability goal. I think it's no surprise if I show you the next slide and you see that these are things, for example, dimensions that were mentioned before COVID-19 about how to create a walkable neighborhood or walkability, promote walkability within a neighborhood. And all of these are still things that actually with the pandemic has been brought out and has been actually brought to attention. So we still need proximity so people can walk within their neighborhood to different facilities. We still need parks and public spaces to accommodate people's need and service them, but maybe with more frequent spaces, so it means less capacity of people using them. We still need personal safety, which is important, pedestrian and bike amenities perhaps. We still need all of these things. It still remains the same. However, we really need to look at how to increase or decrease the capacity of people using them. And in terms of policies and procedures, the government has done a great job doing awareness, motivation, and compliance using the three main frameworks or guidelines in terms of policy. However, they have to continue doing this. They have to monitor and control the situation, and they have to start thinking about how to recreate what they didn't, that was missing, and enhance what was already there in order to accommodate the new needs. And generally, our recommendations, which are very initial, because again, we are saying the research is still going on. We're still in a very preliminary part of the research. However, there is no surprise that we need to understand that there's an importance to enhance walkability, to make sure that the neighborhood is well serviced and have enough facilities, and not one facility to serve all the neighborhood. If it's a big neighborhood, maybe we need more than one facility. We need to understand that online systems are in, and we need to provide more education about them, more understanding about how to utilize them, time lapse and rotation in terms of maybe congestion, to decrease congestion, in terms of work, maybe in schools and universities, we can do morning and evening and do a time lapse. We have to consider using more frequent time and less capacity in all of our systems. Of course, technology and smart systems become again a highlighter or a must nowadays, because this automated system can really provide and protect against transmitting of diseases and things like that, looking into this infection and sanitized material and other simple things, but really valid in this case. And to propose a very quick model in how our city should look like, I think the most important thing is that we really have to have a well-serviced neighborhood. So to have this well-serviced neighborhood, we have to have proximity of services, again, to promote walkability. We have to utilize perhaps pedestrian access, and with this we need to have continuous wide pavement. We have to have automated systems in our transportation perhaps, and things that are touchless in terms of technology, perhaps considering things like more public spaces, public parks, considering things like urban parks as well, where people can actually utilize their time, utilizing rooftops, which is an important aspect, because again, the weather aspect is a challenge here. Looking into creating outdoor cafes and restaurants, perhaps, which also take away the burden of staying indoor and keeping this social distancing at bay. Looking into perhaps cycling lane, shopping boulevard instead of malls, which is a question anyone who works in economy will say, you know, malls have more foot count, it's more feasible. But now with pandemic, maybe our priority need to change. We need to look at our streetscape. And all of these things are really working together to create a better neighborhood and a more resilient city in the future. I think one of the really, we missed one of the slides there. But anyway, I think we're done here and we are ready for your questions. Yeah, the last. I think, yeah, we missed our last 3 slides. I don't know where they are, but anyway, they only had our emails in case, I'll post them in the chat in case anyone wants to communicate with us. Okay, so Mohammed started by sending us, let's see, okay. Action that should be thought by planner based upon the street. Okay, so there's a question by Dr. Yasser Fouda saying it's a good presentation about how the pandemic consequences and impact on the way of our life and city activities, but he was looking into things. He wanted to find more guidelines, practical ones, dealing with the physical planning of the city part under the transition, expansion, or upgrading, for example. In other words, actions that should be thought by planners and designers based upon demonstrated consequences, or how would all what's said reflect on the planning and upgrading decision? I think in this term, it's really important to highlight that, again, we mentioned in the start that this is still an ongoing research. Yes, of course, we have maybe presented more of literature than solutions. We haven't concluded any solution, practical solution yet, but we have touched upon some of these, perhaps, Dr. Yasser. So if you look at this slide, for example, we thought that, okay, so it's important within a neighborhood, the guidelines is, again, in terms of policy, we have to have awareness, motivation, and compliance, which is something the government has. This is the guideline in terms of policy. These are things that need to continue in order to be able for the government to monitor and regulate the things. And in terms of neighborhood, there's very simple things of a model of how to create more facilities. And with more facilities come less capacity, because you don't want one supermarket servicing the whole area. For example, you don't want one park. If you have enough residents in a place, then you have to create more facilities for these places. Again, a streetscape, looking at these things. So we have touched upon some of these perhaps in this slide. And I hope that maybe later on in our research, we can actually come up with more concluded recommendations. So, Manu, would you like to? Yes.
I've got a question here. So where do you see the intersection of COVID and environmentally sustainable design? I don't think they can hear me. So in answer to the question, which was how do we see, just a minute, that how do we see the intersection of COVID and environmentally sustainable design? Well, the way our sustainable design is always taking into consideration how we can reduce the emission of carbon dioxide and how we can create cities which are walkable cities. So actually there is a lot of overlap of the same type of basis that we have here. So our cities can still be extremely sustainable by using rooftops, which can be gardens maybe. This is something that we are still developing, and that is the idea behind our research as well, that how can we amalgamate these two things together, that is the city which is healthy, which has a lot of outdoor spaces, and which is also producing its own energy and generating its own energy, that is providing a healthy environment for the inhabitants. And so it's something that we have to take into consideration, and we will be, inshallah, after, as we are progressing with our research and developing it further. Right now, as my friend mentioned here as well, that this is an ongoing study. We are understanding the reaction from the COVID situation, and it is new to all of us, and we are trying to integrate it with keeping sustainability in mind.
Another question is by Mr. Hussam Saleh. Okay, he mentioned that again, this is a documentation and analysis to the current situation. However, he's really looking forward to looking more of a recover mode, ability to communicate, current. Okay, so what are the actual intended objective needed for promoting and adjusting our design and planning trends? I think in this case, what we noticed, and I think there was a graph that I wanted to add and I forgot in the last moment, is that there was, of course, the UN, when you have the UN sustainability goals, for resilient city, for example, and now comes in the middle of the whole thing is health and safety. So now we really need to look at health and safety. Can you mute? Can you mute yourself?
Sorry.
So now we really have to look into health and safety as one of the major priorities in terms of sustainability as well. So it has to be an integrated work of how to create a resilient city. So a resilient city is not reverting to the back. It's not, there is no an equation for how to create a resilient city. I think it's something that comes as case specific from a neighborhood to neighborhood, from some society to another. It differs with lots of things. However, what's really more important now is to create more, again, to bring human beings within the center as a stakeholder. They recognize that their safety, their health, is really as important as any other measures and needs. I think we have been looking into the environment and how pollution is affecting, and always they have been always, of course, as users, as the stakeholders of this whole thing. However, now health and safety comes really in the top of the pyramid. We have to really think about all of these things in terms to create a more resilient city in the future. So looking at things like we mentioned, like maybe automated technologies, looking into things that promote health and safety for people, creating a more healthy lifestyle for people, making sure that we are not considering condensation and high capacity, which is also, I know that it's more efficient in terms and feasible in terms of economy, but high capacity now also jeopardize the health and safety of people. So maybe we need to take a little bit of a step backward and look into methods of decreasing the capacity, which more frequent assumption, and this might solve a little bit, becomes again an adequate solution to the situation so far.
So the survey that we conducted as answer to the question, one of the questions that has been posted, we conducted the survey in Jeddah, and we did an online survey, and we were able to get response from the north, west, and a little bit from the south as well, but not enough from the east. And then we did telephonic interviews, and we contacted a lot of people to get unified results from Jeddah only. So this is basically, our study is for Jeddah specifically. There is another question.
Yeah, there's lots of them coming. Sorry if we're taking a bit of time answering all of them. Okay. Sure. I think one of our participants wants to voice question. Mohammed, if you wanna, sure. If you want him to join the Dr. Hassan, if you want to say your
yes.
Unmute yourself and.
Yeah. Can you open for me? Oh, great.
Yes.
Thank you very much. You went thoroughly through the problem, but don't forget that there is another dimension that can help as well. That the surveillance of the state, that the government can help and advising us where is the critical area that we have to give consideration, and where is the areas that can be little, less, and the problem. The problem we are having, it sometimes goes to the peak and gradually diminish. The problem is about the stressful of the environment and our vision as architects. We have limited issue. We have an existing buildings and we have existing environment that we can't physically change. Maybe we are looking for future. The idea now is developed in a way that for the new development, yes, we can take action. But nowadays, I think the thought of having affordable housing, that we are adding another function that encourages us that we can convert the furniture, for instance. Since there is new function gonna be within the house and there is a limitation in the areas, I think we can rethink about reusing the spaces in a way or another. We can give advices for that. In addition, that we shouldn't forget that technology can support even in the overall systems. It is not a system that will be all the time here and there. It goes to the peak, and again, it's the idea that how can we open the society gradually when things goes more reasonable, and then when there is a serious situation that we will lock it. But the locking is not the major issue that we always look for. So surveillance is very important. Technology can help even in urban planning. Virtual alarm is an issue as well through our application and system and so on. Urban, yes, I know that we have to utilize the existing situation, for traffic ways and this and that. And nowadays, they are changing even the transportation units. They are trying to give spaces and regulate, the way of approaching people. I don't want to go so much. You went deeply on that, and you give a lot of beautiful vision. But it's an open issue for innovation and so on. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hassan.
Maybe can add later.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hassan. I think that was a very valid point. And I think, yes, it's important. And to capture what you said, I want also to move on and highlight that we cannot only depend on the government. The government can do, they have already done a lot in this term, and we really need to bring along the private sector as well. The government has really invited lots of and facilitated green investment in private sector for so long, and there is the time where we need all stakeholders involved, not only the policymakers. We also need the private sector, people's cooperation, and this is really way as important as this. And then moving on to our next question, I think. Okay, there was a question here.
One of the questions is.
Okay, one of the questions was, how about the psychological aspects in one of your focus? I did not see the conclusion. Okay, so of course, the psychological aspect is that people felt entrapped. They felt that they are staying inside their house all the time. And I think one of the things that, no surprise, is that going outside, just being outside in a well-serviced neighborhood, going outside, being able to walk in the street, being able to conduct activities in the street, going for a walk in a boulevard, or going for a cafe, using automated technology, so that you make sure that if you're stepping outside of your house, you're still safe. And that's why on our level, we're thinking about, and all of these things come under health and safety, comes psychology or psychological aspects come under the health of safety of people. Because again, when you're providing them with this appropriate streetscape, appropriate accommodation, this will also reflect on their psychological needs as well.
I would like to give a brief idea about the kind of questions that we focused on in our questionnaire. It was mainly, we wanted to understand where they were placed in the whole of Jeddah, so that we understand how different areas, the people in different areas behaved and during this lockdown period. We conducted this survey when the lockdown was still on, and we waited for a period of a month for all the results to gather, to collect all the information. So it was very interesting to see how the initial answers varied from later on, like, and then we had some of the questions were that whether they live in the compound, whether they live in villa, or is it apartments which they occupy, and the number of people living inside a house. So we wanted to understand how people were functioning during this lockdown when they were inside, what they had enough space to conduct their activities, because how many kids they had that they had to do the virtual learning, or were they able to step out during the lockdown period? What if they needed to get something from a shop nearby? How did they do it? Did they use their car to go get their grocery shopping, or did they use they just walked to get a daily need, whatever they needed? So it was just basically trying to understand. Then the telephonic interview was also to understand how they behaved. They were all very worried as well. So we wanted to know whether they did some physical activity or not, whether they were able to continue with what they used to do before. So there were a lot of questions, and these were the results which came out from them, which we have shared.
Hello. May I?
Yes, sorry. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Abir. We're waiting for your question.
Yes. Good evening, and thank you for this very nice presentation. Allow me, please, to comment on the operational plan of the research per se. It's not about its content as much as about the handling the research itself. So first of all, you introduced two concepts on about sustainability and about resilient cities, but I didn't see those two concepts actually embedded in your survey in a quite clear manner. The survey is something different than what you are targeting to reach. You are targeting to come out with something called sustainable city or resilient city that can cope up with the future pandemic, but the survey did not tackle such issues at all. Unfortunately, from my point of view, you went horizontally in your research. You tackled so many issues from your observations and your readings. Many people are now actually, it's kind of hot topic. Many people are doing research today about post-pandemic, post-COVID-19 pandemic in terms of planning, housing, neighborhoods, everything. But instead of focusing on one area, you chose to go horizontally and tackle all these areas in one same research. But the way that you designed your survey actually is kind of, you try to spot the problems in each of these areas from your point of view. Yani, you designed your survey by putting certain questions that are stemmed out from your own surveys, so the respondent actually will answer you what you want. It's kind of directed survey, which directs the whole research to validate your own observations. And then came the section of the not results as much as it's kind of still proposal or it's kind of ideas, let's put it more accurately, but that did not come out. It's not based on evidence, neither from literature review or from your surveys. The survey is on one side and your proposal is on the other side. And the last slide you put about neighborhoods is kind of an evidence on that. You did not stem your ideas in designing the neighborhood from your survey. It's from your own ideas, which is not even based on literature review or on certain evidences. So there are so many flaws in your research that maybe because you're still in the initial phases, maybe you can overcome those. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Abir. Okay, so of course, let me just recap what you mentioned. Thank you very much for your comments, very valid comments. Yes, we are still in the preliminary stages of conducting our survey. However, the survey, let me start by saying that the principles of sustainability and sustainable cities are well known to everyone and not related to this pandemic, not related to surveys. What we were trying to capture with the survey is the reaction of people. How may they want to diverge or converge from these principles? Are they willing to diverge? Do they need something new, different from these principles that were already implemented before, or they need to go? Well, the way we conducted the survey was in a very simple manner. We didn't divert their question in any certain way. On the contrary, we just asked them, are they willing, for example, to walk, where they will be willing to walk if they have a nearby facility? And most of them said, yes, we will be walking if the weather is okay, and it depends on the timing of the day. We wanted to check walkability, for example, by this. We also asked people if they are facing one of the interesting things, for example, was a very general question asked to people, like what were the positive things that you noticed within the lockdown period? And people automatically answered from themselves without us tracking them in any way, saying that the Jeddah became less polluted and the air was more clear. So again, it noted us that people are aware of pollution issues, people are aware of proximity issues, and people are aware of these things. So when we proposed our model in the end, we tried to look into methods and things that we didn't only build on our surveys. You cannot build the result only from the surveys, but we also concluded from urban designers all over and approaches that have been taking upon the pandemic from all over the world. So there is no surprise that we need a better streetscape, for example, to walk in. People cannot walk in a street that has a non-continuous wide pavement, and this is the case in some of the streets. However, people are now willing, like there is lots of efforts. If you look at Corniche, there's lots of people utilizing the Corniche. It's an amazing new development that people are well utilizing. However, the question remains of how can you utilize these cities or these parts to be resilient, as we mentioned, without actually keeping the health and safety of people, keeping the healthy distance or the safe distance from other users. If you don't have enough facilities, then people will be condensed in one space. So these are all things, yes, we are still in the beginning of our research. However, we really needed to test all of these dimensions so that later on, we focused more on users' experience in terms of three things. Yeah, we started with a big umbrella, but we focused only on services and facilities later on those policies that need to regulate those services and facilities, and of course on things like looking into the systems of online systems to also accommodate this. Thank you very much for your note. Moving to the next question. I think we have a question from Dr. Afaf. I'm not sure if you can unmute yourself and just ask your question, Dr. Afaf.
Yes, hello.
Hello. Go ahead.
First of all, well done, both of you.
Thank you.
I commend all your efforts. It's a great effort, and I could see that. The points I'm going to raise are not at all criticism. It's, as you said, this is a researching process. So I'm just going to highlight 2 points. One that has to do with economy. And I would like your research as it develops to just touch upon work opportunities for people who have lost their jobs during such pandemic, and maybe this can be solved through architecture and urban design. That's a challenge that you may like to look into. Another thing is about new facets of tourism, which will depend on local people. These are 2 points about economy, 1 point about the environment and about the love of people to go to gardens and parks. You talked about roofs. Perhaps you can also consider vertical gardens. And the last point is about accessibility. And accessibility, when I talk about accessibility, you did talk about it, by the way, but I wanted just to highlight accessibility for handicapped and people of special needs, especially in high-rise buildings. When there is a need for evacuation, it's very difficult for them to use stairs, and of course, lifts are out of question. So these are things you can consider, because usually crises come to add to the troubles that vulnerable people have. Thank you very, very much. I would have liked to know the name of your colleague, Sherin.
Our colleague, Miss Lara Al-Kholi, she was introduced in the beginning of the talk. She's done a lot with us. We're so unfortunate she's not with us today.
Yes, but I mean your colleague that I can see her now.
Miss Suman Farouqi.
I'm Suman Farouqi. I'm the third participant. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself in the beginning. I think the ArchiNet Mohammed introduced all of us. So actually, I can't hear. I have to put my phone on the speaker. Thank you so much for your comments. They were very apt. And you're right. We need to address all of these issues. And we want to make, because we feel as architects, it is our responsibility to make sure that the city, responds to all of the needs of the society. So whatever this presentation is all about is to get, yes, all the feedback from the people, very valid feedback that we have received, and we will try to include that. And especially about the handicap, what you've been saying, that is something which is extremely important, and it needs to be integrated into our cities. So thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you for your question.
Okay, there's also another Dr. Atif. Would you like to unmute yourself and just ask your question?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the comprehensive presentation. It's still, I mean, this whole situation, everyone realizes it's still fluid, and we are still trying to understand, its impact. But I would like probably, for the next phase of the research, if looking at the built environment, maybe from the other side of the tunnel, what we have now, maybe you guys could use all the indicators that you developed already to show us, for instance, for a place like Jeddah, but in any other city as well, like how COVID-19 or how COVID-19 ready or worthy is a place or a neighborhood. If there is some sort of an index that could be developed eventually, like for instance, you showed an example of what you called unplanned settlements, and there was wide blanket decisions that they are not, COVID-19 ready, for instance. I don't know if it's true or not. Maybe with an index that is more developed and more colorful, we would know exactly what are the places that are really COVID-19 ready or near to be ready, or could be ready with the modifications, or how far or close they are. Maybe, by the development of this index, we'll find out that probably, I don't know, only 10% of Jeddah is really habitable during a pandemic situation, or 90% of it. And this definitely will have an impact on real estate trends. It will have an impact on business trends and all of that, creating a COVID-19 map, so to speak, of a place like Jeddah, or I don't know, Riyadh, or even a small town. I think this is probably an output that I would like to see eventually, of course, not right now, but with the development of your research methodology, questionnaires or otherwise, I think this is something probably that we could look at. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very valid point, and I think it's an important thing to touch upon. And as you say, it's an ongoing thing. We are still learning. Lots of even the papers and the websites and even reports done by NGOs, done with policymakers, of saying that this is an ongoing thing. We need to learn a lot from it. It's really hard to conclude anything when the thing is still going on. And I think it's a very valid point looking into neighborhoods. Thank you very much. This is an interesting point that we'll definitely look into within our research, or try as much as possible to conclude within our research. I think one last question is, okay, someone asking, Ms. Manal asking, thanks again for another talk, interesting talk. Would they have to look more like old cities? Okay, so what about new cities? Wouldn't they have to look more like old cities in the sense of sustainability and independency in order to face this or new pandemics? They would have to be more like rural and less urban, more horizontal and less vertical cities, more self-efficient, local dependent and less international dependent. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Manal. I think this is a problem that lots of designers, even all over the world, have been saying. I think we read in Times Magazine about Alvar Aalto, or one of the very famous architects, mentioning that I think it's time now to realize that we need to go away from urban living and all the way to country living. However, there will come, this is the question and the challenge that we face as urban designers, because lots of regulation, lots of policies, lots of funding, lots of investment has been put into urban living. Because we all understand that with high density of people comes high feasibility, more efficiency. It again becomes more feasible economically. And this is a question of how to maintain this number of residents within a neighborhood or within a city, while also, because with this number of residents also come opportunities like what Dr. Afaf said about work opportunities, for example. So we really need to maintain the amount of condensation or the capacity of cities, because we have lots of population all over the world. We cannot just keep an expansion. This will divert our efforts. This will need more funding, and it will really divert all the efforts that have been done. But we really need to keep the high condensation and focus more on doing things, more facilities, giving less capacity of users. And then these things will actually maybe make our cities more resilient. And this is what we need to conclude now, saying that, okay, so less capacity, but with the same efficiency, the same number of users, just not to revert our efforts, but to move forward somehow. Thank you very much. And I think we answered most of our questions so far.
And thank you, Dr. Sherin and Dr. Suman. Yeah, all the questions are done finally. Everyone's, there is no remaining questions actually. We completely done with it. Thank you again for the two parts actually talks, and the comprehensive data that you shared. And I believe it, as you said, is still in the progress of the completing the research. And wish you all luck, and thank you everyone for being with us tonight.
Thank you everyone. Thank you for having us. Have a good evening. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone.
Bye bye.